I have way too many camera bags. Full disclosure, I bought and have used extensively each of the bags I show you today, with the exception of the Oberwerth. Oberwerth sent me their bag just a few weeks ago with no expectation of return, but as with all of the other companies in this video, they had no input to it, no prior approval or review of it, and no money exchanged hands. In other words, the views expressed herein, as always, are absolutely my own. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and today I want to talk about higher and highest-end camera bags, especially Oberwerth's Hydroline Medium SL, designed specifically for the Leica SL series, and in fact the impetus for this video. But in order to do that, first I want to provide a context for my comments by sharing with you the what, where, how, and why of a couple of other bags I already own and once again have used extensively, beginning with this one, actually. My Billingham 225, my second one. Hold that thought. Now, Billingham is well known, renowned actually, for its waterproof canvas and leather bags with brass fittings crafted in the UK. They are instantly recognizable and, like Orvis and Filson, got their start with fishing and shooting bags. Only Billingham, however, shifted its focus to photographers. This particular 225, however, is constructed not with canvas, but with a newer synthetic material called Fibernite. Lighter, harder wearing. But bags made from either material are equally waterproof, and although still handcrafted at multiple stages, they are also the beneficiaries of computer-controlled machinery, which I think is very cool. I used my first 225, an old-school tan canvas one, exclusively for more than a decade, beginning in the 1990s to schlep my Canon gear, first film, then digital. I'm talking cameras, my 35mm film Canon EOS 3 through a number of intermediary steps onto the 1D, and finally to my Canon 5D Mark II. Lenses, usually my Canon EF Holy Trinity zooms, 17-35, 28-70, and 70-200 2.8Ls, although I also had a pile of primes, using most often the 51.4, 135 2.5, and 200 1.8. Yeah, bad boy. And miscellany, usually a couple of rolls of film back in the day, sometimes with a speed light or two, plus filters and batteries. Later on, occasionally an iPad for, say, entertainment during a flight. That bag simply swallowed up everything I chose to throw at it with aplomb. I enjoyed everything about it, especially the clever handle, as I was often throwing it into a car or taking it onto planes where one seeks to avoid as much as possible bludgeoning a fellow passenger with one's bag while jostling for a seat. Although once we'd arrive at our destination, I'd usually remove all but the camera and a lens or two to go out shooting. I think I enjoyed it even more because it was a gift, a functional masterpiece I'd never seen before from a brand of which I'd never heard. The 225 was, and remains to me, a thing of beauty, functionally and aesthetically, bulletproof and stormproof protection with personality, quality materials, and quality construction, nary an errant stitch in sight. For the last few years, however, this Billingham has been a far more occasional home for my gear. That's because I don't carry the way I did back then. I don't carry what I did back then either. The majority of the time when I carry now, I'm likely to have the gear in hand or on my shoulder for hours at a time on the streets of New York, Seattle, London, Tokyo. You get the idea. Street photography, where even a pound of extra weight, let alone a kilo or three, wears on me over the course of a day. So, right, now I carry much lighter and smaller. Except when we're on location for a single camera video shoot, where this 225 is just about perfect for holding a fully rigged hybrid mirrorless camera, a couple of zooms, filters, and audio gear, of course, maybe a small LED light, maybe even a tiny gimbal. For that, the 225 remains unparalleled among my personal collection. In our case, I'm talking about a Sony a7R5 with a couple of G-Master zooms, the 24-70 and 70-200 Mark IIs, or a Panasonic S5 II with a few Lumix S primes, maybe sometimes Sigma's 24-70 2.8 DGD and Art. But a 3-camera shoot, because we do those too, then we're talking Pelican. But that's another story for another time. If the Billingham is a highly performant, larger than I usually need bag with a look and feel redolent of an earlier era, this bag, Peak Design's everyday Sling 6-liter, is a convincing counterpoint to the 225, much better suited to how I work today for my personal work. It's also a highly performant bag, but where the Billingham is relatively heavy and large at about 3.3 pounds empty with 10 liters or so of capacity. Yes, I mix up English and metric, so sue me. The Sling really does come in around 6 liters, a highly technical bag designed in the USA, tipping the scales at just 1.4 pounds, conceived to be as small, light, and flexible as possible using the latest materials and techniques. Now, it's not much to look at. Utterly nondescript, if you ask me. But its party trick is that it can operate as a sling, a shoulder bag, or a waist pack and still hold my SL2 with Apo-Summicron SL35 attached, along with up to 2 of our small Sigma DGDN I series or a single larger Art Prime. Okay, it can do the whole transformer thing and it is cool, but it requires too much futzing for me personally. Of course, for what it's worth, as many of you may have heard me say before, I'm used to being a statistical outlier, and I'll put a link down in the description below to a lovely and amusing video by Peak Design to show you how it works. Back to precisely how I use my bags with what gear and why. When shallow depth of field, for example, is on the menu, I will usually complement the SL2 Apo-35 combo with my Sigma 85 1.4 DGDN Art. I can squeeze it all in with both lens hoods, along with extra SD cards, batteries, hand sanitizer, and an extra mask. Yes, even now. Although, I do have to remove one of the 2 partitions. Oh well. If I need something longer than the 35, but I don't need to get quite as narrow or shallow as the 85 1.4, Sigma's 65 f2 is an optically and physically wonderful alternative, smaller and lighter too. Although, there really isn't enough room in either scenario to stuff my 11-inch iPad Pro into the internal sleeve designed for it, which actually is fine because there's absolutely zero reason for me to have a tablet on the street. When I need more range, that is a requirement to go wider and longer than the 35, I'll typically add Sigma's 24 3.5 and swap out the 85 1.4 in particular for either that 65 f2 or Sigma's even smaller 92.8. Also superb for the price and size, if not quite as sharp wide open as a 65, and store them back to back courtesy of a dual lens holder made by my friend Ed. Like this. Pretty neat. If enough of you are interested, I could ask Ed if he'd be open to making more of them. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments section below. Overall, this is a great street kit, uber performant, nicely sealed against the elements, as small, unobtrusive, yet flexible as possible given the SL2 starting point, even if the Sling gives up more than a little padding to the 225. Although, I should mention that there have been times when I've wanted to go lighter still, and that's when the SL2 Apo-35 combo shines brightest. Nice resolution, I can punch in all the way the lens will deliver, and the Sling has plenty of room at that point for power bars, even a bottled water. Unfortunately, the Sling is not only a better choice for me because of its size and weight, but because it gives no hint of what's inside. Sign of the times, that one. With that as prelude, now let's talk about this bad boy. Oberwerth's Hydroline, as in vegetable tanned leather for maximum weather protection, medium SL messenger bag, purpose-built for the Leica SL series, as I mentioned earlier, handcrafted in Germany. At a functional level, it is the Goldilocks solution among these bags for me personally, slotting in between the Billingham and Peak Design in terms of weight, size, looks, and capacity. It comes in at 2.8 pounds with a bit over 7 liters of storage, excluding a pair of thin, shallow external pockets. This makes it marginally larger than the Sling due to its more squared-off design for the most part, and slight dimensional advantages, notably smaller than the 225 because it is thinner, call it a good 20 or 25% thinner, with a corresponding decrease in capacity of about 30%. That shallower profile, however, does improve its center of gravity for carry purposes. And while the Oberwerth is muted, compared to the Billingham, even plain Jane, perhaps to some, to the discerning eye, from its minimalist design and discreetly branded wordmark in the bag's hydrophobic leather, with 4 hardpoints on the bag's bottom to further isolate the contents from water when you put it on the ground, to the discreet and functional yet somehow old-school/modern fittings hiding a delightful red interior. The Medium SL bag screams, rather quietly, it should be added, like a Savile Row suit, that this is something special. It is perfectly structured to hold the same SL2 kit as the everyday Sling and a bit more. It can actually hold the 85 1.4 and the 24 3.5 along with the SL2 and Apo 35, still with more breathing room inside, more usable external pockets, and a wider mouth at the top, making it a dawdle to store or retrieve gear without getting caught on zippers or anything else, even my 11-inch iPad Pro when fully loaded. Notably faster and easier to open or close than the Peak design and the Billingham. And gorgeous, fair enough, to the touch. Although, unlike either of those two, the Oberwerth does not have the added protection from the elements of a top zipper. The leather may be beautiful and hydrophobic, but this bag is the least likely of the three I'd want to carry in a driving rain. I can imagine water finding its way around the top flat and down the less than full width side flaps, kind of like speed ramps to the gear inside. But that's a hypothetical case because no, I did not try to find out with an actual test. On the other hand, unlike the other two, the Medium SL is equipped with a luggage trolley strap so discreet that I didn't even notice it. Claudia had to point it out to me. Impressive. And excellent as the Billingham is, one could argue that the Oberwerth is constructed to an even higher standard, not only because of the all-leather shell, but because of the lifetime warranty that comes with it. Billingham guarantees its bags for 5 years. Although, heads up, both companies require you to register their bags with a limited window after purchase in order to activate those warranties. And get this, Peak Design also has a lifetime guarantee, and as best I can tell, doesn't require any registration. I really like that, and I like the way they write about their guarantee on their website. All 3 of these bags, it is fair to say, are superb in their own way, but are any of them actually worth it? That's the question. Of course, we can't answer that question without talking prices, so let's do that next. If the Billingham 225, priced at $435, has the feel of something from Orvis or Filson, a timeless, no-nonsense quality that somehow transcends both attributes, the Peak Design Everyday Sling 6, priced at $120, something from Columbia or North Face, and the Oberwerth Medium SL Hydroline, priced at $950. Yeah, you heard that right, closing in on a cool grand. A mashup of something from Savile Row, a little Hugo Boss, actually, because it is a German company after all. Maybe a little ZZ Top, because it is the kind of accessory for a sharp-dressed man. Okay, not so much when I use it, but what are you going to do? In the end, these bags clearly reflect different audiences, use cases, and budgets. The Billingham remains my go-to for schlepping too much gear to a destination and then retrieving bits and bobs from it over the course of a few hours or days. I've already mentioned our use case, one camera on location video shoot, but for the rest of us, think event photography, in the pit concert photography, courtside at a basketball game photography, maybe Lakes District or Cornish coastline landscape photography. In any scenario, it will last forever, hold everything shy of going full Pelican with more padding than the other two, and look good doing it in its very English way, but $435. You could spend far less than that on, say, a Domke F2 with the same approximate capacity and weight, and it's a pretty decent bag. But if you have the money, go check out Billingham's bags and draw your own conclusions. The 6-liter Peak Design Sling is my current go-to for my personal work when I use the SL2. It's about going minimal on the street. I am not schlepping a pile of gear to a destination, but instead carrying as little as possible because I'm committed to the journey. And what I am carrying on me as I roam. And just about no one is going to pay any attention to it on the street. Look at that guy. But 120 bucks. Actually, I think it's pretty hard to beat the Sling 6 at the price. Of course, there are less expensive alternatives, any number of which you may find completely satisfactory, and that's fine. I like, for example, Domke's F5XB. I've got one over there, although it's a bit too small for my SL2 with 2 lenses, not as padded as I'd like, and it doesn't have the same weather protection. But it's only 10 bucks less. I really like Tenba's $130 DNA Slim 9 messenger bag because it's a bit easier to put gear in or take out than the Sling 6, and I think it's a bit better sealed against the elements too. The DNA Slim 9 does give up half a pound to the Sling 6L, however, and it also gives up about an inch in width, but it manages to hold just about the same amount as the Sling. It is, in fact, the bag I use for my Leica M11 with 5 lenses on board and the VisoFlex 2 and both extra SD cards and battery. Same for all of them. And extra mask. And extra hand sanitizer. Finally, let's turn to the Oberwerth. Best considered, like the Billingham, either as a lifetime purchase, where, just like a brass Leica, it only gets better with scuff marks, or as a haute couture piece, for those times, and for those of us with the budget and the inclination, when it's okay to dress up, go out, and make a statement, carrying lighter, smaller, and easier than the Billingham, carrying a bit more and more easily than the Sling. Beyond that iPad Pro I already mentioned, with the interior pocket design for it, maybe a small shoe-mounted flash and or a wireless mic kit in the external pockets hidden under the flap, if at the cost of twice the weight of the Sling and just about 8 times the price. Twice the price of the Billingham while giving up about a third of its capacity. Call the Oberwerth functional and elegant versus Billingham's equally functional and traditional, either a truly worthy home away from home, not only for an SL series kit, but actually for any full-frame mirrorless kit of your choice as well. Maybe not the big boys like the R3, the Z9, you get what I'm saying. Although only the Oberwerth could be considered an under-the-radar Q-ship on the street, nothing to look at for all but a few. But 950 bucks. At this price, candidly, we're not talking value so much as other things, unless you really do keep it for a lifetime and have more than a few years left. But frankly, I couldn't even find a camera bag at the same price by any other company. I did find Ona bags over at B&H topping out at the $520 Brixton, along with a few barbershop bags, a brand I've never heard of, topping out at $840. And while I have had neither in hand, the fact that Leica stores sell Ona and Billingham bags, some made exclusively for them, is the best indication of which bags Leica thinks are worthy of their cameras and thus legitimate competitors to the Oberwerth. Which leaves us, when it comes to the Oberwerth, with this. Their medium SL Hydroline is beautiful, beautifully crafted, functional, reasonably stealthy. One can argue a pinnacle product, and I might agree with you. But what is unarguable, inarguable, is that it remains the most expensive camera bag I've ever had in hand, the most expensive camera bag I've ever seen. On that basis, one could argue that it actually has no peer, but I don't see it that way. I see it this way. Of course, there are far more economical options, smaller and bigger options, up to the functional tasks required of them, and I've mentioned a number of them already. Yet again, if one has the money, inclination, and the gear for which it is specifically designed, that is the highest use of the bag, the Oberwerth is a wonderful if extravagant gift, especially to oneself. Then again, for most of us, so is a Leica. But my instinct suggests that it makes an even better gift from you to your favorite Leica file. Yeah, there is some wiggle room in that last statement, especially since Father's Day is around the corner. The good news, as I wind this up, is that you or someone who loves you very much can save 10% by visiting www.oberwerth.com, make sure it's the US site, and using the discount code TBMAAE10. Oh, one more thing. If you're still wondering whatever became of my first Billingham bag, it is already a family heirloom passed down to one of my daughters, who, after borrowing it as a weekend bag by removing the internal divider and removable lens organizer more than a decade ago, was never going to give it back to me anyway.